In the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles, Jessica reigned supreme, her beauty a beacon, her wealth a fortress, her pride a poison that would unravel it all. Jessica Monroe, a woman in her late 30s, moved through the city like a queen, her every step a declaration of dominance. Her porcelain skin glowed under the California sun, her emerald eyes sparkled with self-assured arrogance, and her designer gowns clung to her like a second skin, each stitch screaming wealth. Diamonds dripped from her neck, wrists, and ears, catching the light with every turn of her head. Yet, beneath the dazzle, pride festered. A weight heavier than her jewels, a shadow darker than her perfectly lined eyes. By her side was Stephanie Carter, a soft-spoken woman in her mid-20s, employed as Jessica's maid. Stephanie's quiet grace stood in stark contrast to her employer's flamboyance. Her warm hazel eyes held a patience honed by years of enduring Jessica's sharp tongue, and her simple attire, a plain gray dress and sensible shoes, belied a strength that shone in her gentle movements. Jessica's belittling remarks, tossed like careless coins, stung but never broke her. Stephanie absorbed them with a dignity that seemed to glow from within, her resilience a silent rebuke to Jessica's cruelty. One sun-drenched afternoon, they strolled down Rodeo Drive, their arms laden with glossy shopping bags from Chanel and Gucci. The street buzzed with life. Tourists snapping photos, cars purring past, the air thick with the scent of perfume and ambition. Ahead, a man stepped into their path, his presence jarring against the polished backdrop. His clothes were tattered, a faded jacket hanging loose on his lean frame, stained with dirt and time. His dark hair was tangled, his beard rough and unkempt, but his piercing blue eyes burned with a quiet dignity that seemed to anchor him. His hands trembled slightly, betraying hunger as he spoke in a low, weary voice. "Please, could you spare some change for a meal?" Jessica's lips curled into a sneer, her emerald eyes narrowing with disgust. "Do I look like a soup kitchen?" she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. "Get out of my way before I have you removed." She swept past him, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement, her posture rigid with disdain. Stephanie lingered, her hazel eyes catching the man's trembling hands, the hollowed cheeks beneath his beard. Compassion stirred in her chest, soft but unshakable. She reached into her worn purse, pulling out a few crumpled bills, her own, not Jessica's, and pressed them gently into his hand. "It's not much," she said, her voice warm as sunlight, "but I hope it helps." The man's blue eyes met hers, a flicker of gratitude softening their intensity. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice steady despite his ragged state. "Your kindness is rare." Stephanie offered a faint smile, then hurried after Jessica, unaware that the man she'd helped was no beggar, but a billionaire in disguise, testing the world's heart. Days later, Jessica strode into an upscale mall, her chin high, expecting the usual deference from staff. Her crimson gown shimmered, diamonds glinting at her throat, but the air shifted as she entered. Staff rushed past her, their eyes fixed on a figure stepping through the glass doors. It was him, the man from the street. Gone were the rags, replaced by a tailored navy suit that hugged his broad shoulders, polished loafers gleaming under the chandeliers. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, his beard gone, revealing a strong jaw and a confident smile. Cameras flashed, whispers rippled through the crowd. Josh Hamilton, one of America's youngest billionaires, a tech mogul whose wealth rivaled Jessica's, but whose heart beat differently. Jessica's world tilted, her heart pounding as realization crashed over her. "No," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. "It can't be." Josh's blue eyes swept the room, landing on Stephanie, who stood frozen, a shopping bag slipping from her hand. He smiled, warm and genuine. "Good to see you again, Stephanie," he said, his voice carrying a quiet strength. Stephanie's lips parted, her hazel eyes wide with shock. You were the man on the street, she stammered. Josh nodded, his smile softening. I sometimes walk the world in disguise to find where true kindness lies. You, Stephanie, showed it without hesitation. Jessica, desperate to reclaim her place, pushed forward, her smile forced and brittle. Josh, darling, she purred, her voice syrupy with false warmth. That day on the street I was only teasing. You know I'm always helping those in need. Josh's eyes turned to ice, his smile fading. Funny, he said, his tone sharp as a blade. I recall only cruelty in your words, no trace of kindness. He turned back to Stephanie, dismissing Jessica without a glance. Would you join me for dinner tonight? Stephanie blinked, her cheeks flushing with surprise, but she nodded, a shy smile breaking through. With that single question, Jessica's carefully constructed empire of arrogance began to crack. Time spun forward. Josh and Stephanie became inseparable, their bond growing in quiet moments. Dinners at candlelit restaurants, walks through blooming gardens, flights to distant shores. Their connection was built on mutual respect, on the kind of love that needed no wealth to shine. Stephanie's laughter, once rare, now rang freely, her hazel eyes bright with joy. Josh, ever grounded despite his billions, found in her a partner who saw the man, not the money. Jessica, meanwhile, faded into the shadows. She attended galas, her gowns as dazzling as ever, but the sparkle felt hollow. The men who once fawned over her drifted away, sensing the bitterness that clung to her like perfume gone sour. Her pride, once her crown, became her cage, isolating her in a world of her own making. The night of Josh and Stephanie's wedding was a vision of enchantment. A sprawling garden glowed with thousands of fairy lights, the air alive with music and the scent of jasmine. Stephanie stood radiant in a flowing white gown, her hazel eyes shimmering with love as Josh, dashing in a black tuxedo, gazed at her with unbridled pride. Jessica stood among the guests, her emerald gown a stark contrast to her hollowed expression. Envy twisted her heart, regret a bitter taste on her tongue. She forced a smile, but her soul ached, screaming for the life she'd squandered. Years passed. Josh and Stephanie built a life filled with laughter, their mansion echoing with the voices of their children. Their faces graced magazine covers, celebrated as a power couple whose love and kindness inspired millions. Jessica, however, grew old in silence. Her once vibrant mansion became a tomb of memories, its chandeliers dim, its rooms thick with dust. Her gowns hung untouched, her diamonds dull without purpose. She sat by a window, clutching a magazine cover of Josh, Stephanie, and their family, their smiles a painful mirror to her solitude. "What good is beauty? What good is wealth?" she whispered, her voice cracking, "when no one is left to love me?" Tears traced lines down her aged face, her reflection a stranger staring back, lonely, forgotten, a shadow of the queen she'd been. And so, the woman who once ruled with pride ended her days in silence, while the humble maid who offered a moment of kindness lived a life rich with love and meaning. The end.